Welcome to the Digiday Podcast. I'm Brian Marcy. We're trying something new this week. I guess we're going to try something new every week now that we're all dispersed. But we are doing a live recording of this podcast via Zoom. And I'm lucky enough to be joined by Rich Antoniello, the CEO of Complex Networks. Rich, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So when all of this stuff really went down, I was like, I want to do a podcast about leading through crisis, and I immediately emailed you, in fact.
I was only the 15th person.
Well, we've talked it. No, seriously, you were the first. And I say that because like we talked a little bit about this actually in Cannes of all places. But I wanted to go back and talk a little bit about, because everyone who is part of an organization right now, or is leading teams in an organization, is faced with a really difficult situation. And some people haven't been through that before, and I think that's a particular challenge of this crisis right now. You have been through this, and I want to talk a little bit about. I'm sorry.
You're saying I'm old?
No, I'm not saying you're old. I've been through it too a couple times. So I wanted to talk a little bit about like your experience with that, and then move forward to today dealing with this particular crisis. So, Complex, back in the financial crisis, was about 8 years old.
6.
6 years old.
So right after 9/11.
Right. So you know how to choose it. It's actually a good time to launch a business, which is something it's something I want to get into.
We'll get to that too. I apologize. Let's put a pin in that. That's right.
Okay, so you guys launched at a great time actually to launch, which is in a downturn, and then you started to get some traction, and the business was different then.
100%. I mean, in 08, you're referencing 08 now, the financial crisis.
08.
Okay. So when by 08 we were, we launched as a magazine only, really in May of 2002. Then in September of 07, we actually launched the digital ad network way back in the day. Remember, we used to talk about that all the time.
I know.
And what was amazing is that had actually grown to such a significant point that it put us in a situation when we were running out of capital. At that point, we were still solely owned by Echo Unlimited, the ECKO, the Rhino brand, and they had run into a lot of trouble. So we were in a situation where we were running out of capital. And CIT was the line of credit for Echo and us on a transferable basis at that point. And they asked us to make massive cuts, about 32, 33% at that time. And
I'm sorry, how big was Complex?
Oh, we were about 80 people at the time.
Okay.
We had basically built out. We had the magazine still. We had the ad network, and then we had our own owned and operated digital play within that. So the digital revenue had continued to scale up. Print had really started to level off. That actually started in 07. Which was the precipice for us getting very aggressive from a digital perspective and launching the ad network in September of 07. So, we had one revenue line item going like this, one revenue line going like this, and our capital that we needed just to operate, our working capital, was being compromised at that point.
So how much money did you have in the bank?
0.
Oh, that must not have been a good feeling.
That is the only thing I say this on a personal basis is I go back and I go, that is that which does not kill you only makes you stronger.
Okay.
If you can get through that, you can get through anything. We were a business that was living hand to mouth. When they told us that we were going to have a lot less capital to play with, and needed to make massive cuts just to be in that situation, our response, unlike all of the other divisions of Echo at that time, just cut about 32, 33% of their staff.
Mm-hmm. So when you say massive cuts, you're talking about people, because it's a media business. You can only cut so much as far as like capital expenditures.
Right. Well, I mean, look, we know that media is a very capital intensive business because of the fixed costs, and a greater preponderance of those fixed costs are people. That's what we do. We create content, then we try and monetize it. We're a very premium player in both of those. So there's not a lot of automation. There's a lot of hands and just people involved. So for us, um, and going back, and I'm sorry we keep going back and forth, but in
Mhm.
'08, um, our lending resource was going to be, it wasn't a discussion with your owners of like, oh, well, you can start here and we'll start here and we'll end up in the middle. It was like, no, 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 we need 33% of this capital back. So here's what we're willing to give you on a continued basis. It was handed to us, not negotiable. So, and like I said, a lot of the divisions of Echo at that time were just cutting staff, like a third of the staff. Our choice was, especially because we are people intensive, and honestly, I believe that the people that build your business also deserve to participate in it as long as absolutely possible. Um, so we went back and figured out a sliding scale of salaries from anywhere from 50% down to about 30% of the senior executives, the more senior executives at that time. That would be the equivalent of cutting 33% of our staff. And we took massive pay cuts, kept everybody on staff, and were able to come out of that crisis not just more strengthened as a business, but solidified as a team. And I think that willingness to work together and be in the foxhole together really also propelled us in a big way as we went forward. I can't say enough about my team. There was not one executive that even balked when I went to everybody to sell them on that idea.
Mhm. I mean, you did scenario planning, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about the scenario planning today because it's difficult to plan scenarios. I think it's more difficult than it was then, or maybe not.
No, I think it's infinitely more difficult because back then, the only uncertainty was the financial, and it was defined what had already happened. Right now, we have two unknowns that are oscillating amongst each other. We have no idea when the virus is going to slow down in the United States. We have no idea when we're going to be able to go back to work. And we have no idea how long the financial impact is going to be. There is no perfect model. So you have three constantly oscillating variables that could all compound each other to the positive or the negative. And we have to plan for the worst and not hope for the best, but every day work towards the best. And I think that's the way we're kind of going about it.
So in '08, when you were planning for the worst, I mean, it had to involve layoffs, right? I mean, like, so explain the decision making process where you and your executive team were like, you know what, we can thread the needle here. Like, we're going to be conservative enough, but we're going to be able to get through this without making these 40% cuts.
I mean, first of all, we're in a situation, we're preparing for a board meeting upcoming next week anyway. But the amount of unknowns that are still there, you can't you can't plan for the absolute worst quite yet. You have to be prepared to consider what could happen. We are evaluating everything right now. The good thing for us is we have actually a one-for-one situation that we pulled from before, the one I just outlined in 2008. Luckily, we actually still have a few people left over from that as well, which is nice. But I think even more so, it's important. Like, I think the amount of conversations and the communication we've had so far has been that we are going to um, aggressively look at cost cutting scenarios on the variable side first and kind of go outside in. The last thing that we get to would ever be layoffs.
Sure.
And again, that I say that for a lot of reasons. There's the personal aspect of the love and pride I have for the team that we have, but even more so, it's actually an intellectual choice. And let me be clear here. This is a really important one. Is if indeed the media business is a capital intensive business because of the people that make it, then if you are going to be a positive person and bet for any sort of recovery or plan for the recovery, then it is up to you to make sure that you think about your team and the preparedness and continuity of that on a consistent basis every single day, irrespective of any challenge that comes up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, this is going to end, and if when it does end, you can't capitalize on it, because coming out of these kind of troughs there's tremendous opportunity. I mean, there's any number of examples of great companies that begin or start their inflection point coming out of these troughs, right?
I mean, look, not to kind of dovetail into a few other conversations, but we're going to benefit from the discipline that we've actually had over these years, unlike a lot of other people. That's totally a grandma glass, by the way. That is awesome. Sorry, I had like just on your choice of glassware. It's all good. But you know,
a great carpenter works with the tools that he has.
That's right. But where I was going with this is, there's a lot of companies that have not been very disciplined about not only being profitable, but then stacking up their own war chest. So, whether you're an individual or a company, it's always sound to be as fiscally conservative in certain ways as possible. You want to balance constantly the choices, the aggressive, swings that you're going to take for your business with the, okay, well, if it doesn't work, how can we pay for it? How do we sustain it? Or if something happens, how do we sustain it? So, the health and the discipline and the rigor that we've operated this business on over the last, actually 10, 15 years, I think is going to come back in spades to us, not just longer term when things do get better, but it buys us time. And, your balance sheet equals time right now. And time is the most valuable commodity in the world. Time with continuity, time to be a player, time to continue to try new things and innovate within those. That to me is, I think, it's an obvious point, but it's not something a lot of people are thinking of because they're kind of thinking about the hand just in front of their face.
Yeah, I mean, we're still in the sort of crisis mode. I know I was talking with another executive who was saying that, he's just been consumed by crisis communication in the past 2 weeks. And I think we're going to sort of, if you can have people who came into your building who ended up testing positive for coronavirus. You can have people in your company who have coronavirus. There's a lot of variables that go on. Talk to me about also.
Can I jump in there one?
Yeah, sure, of course.
Like, I think that's an interesting point. Whoever that person is, I'm not trying to point them out, but I actually think they're doing it all wrong. They're allowing themselves to be in 100% reactive state. We talked about focus before we started this call, like when we were just joking around on the front. It is our choice as leaders to make sure that we are doing a balance of looking backwards, like reacting and being proactive. Mm-hmm. And if you're sitting there saying right now, you're using the current context as an excuse to be 100% reactive, then I'm sorry, you're selling yourself and your business short.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the biggest test of compartmentalization I think that there 100%. Can possibly be, because it can be overwhelming, and you can't be overwhelmed by it. Looking back at 2008, it seems like you guys got the big things right. But like looking back as you navigate this one, what's something you would do differently?
That's a really good question, because at that point we had not broken off yet. And the financial crisis actually gave us the opportunity to go raise venture capital and restart the business and buy out some of our owners. I think when something like this happens, and I was under such duress about working capital, I did focus on going, okay, this is a message that I don't want to be beholden to somebody else, right? Like, this is where I was looking past the hand in front of my face. It wasn't just solving for working capital, but it was like, okay, what is the right thing so that when and if this happens again, we're not in that situation. That's why we wanted to go raise our own balance sheet and be, beholden to ourselves. And then a different investor base. That was great. But one thing I didn't do is I didn't look at the differentiation and where we were, and I didn't optimize the deal structure. I was so consumed with just getting it done with the deal with Excel and Austin Ventures to fund us, and we got that deal done in November of 09. Which not many media not many media businesses were actually getting any semblance of investment at that point. We were able to do that with 2 AAA investors because we were a close to profitable business that was very differentiated, that had a lot of momentum on the digital side of things. But because of I let the context 100% dictate the terms of the deal, and we gave too much of the business away from a valuation perspective.
Okay. Well, that's a hindsight 2020.
No, I know, but by the way, but you want to talk about impactful to everybody and what that means down the road, and also what it meant for the ability to go raise more capital and not potentially lose control of your business as well. If we're going to talk big picture, let's talk big picture though, right?
Let's talk big picture.
Look, that's a big, I take that as a personal L because it's something that I should have known and should have contemplated.
Yeah.
And there's not much though. I will say this, and it's not a modesty thing or a lack of modesty thing, but I think we did a lot right with the staff. And what's interesting is I think it was a byproduct when you set a tone by not letting anybody go or letting very few people go and sharing the pain as a team. We were all rowing in the same direction. So for the team and for the business, it was very easy during that next 12 to 18 months because there was nobody was off on a rogue agenda. We knew what we had to do. Every dollar mattered. Every new initiative mattered. Every story mattered. Every word mattered. Every dollar mattered. Like it was probably even though it was very challenging and there was a lot of pressure, it was one of the most fun times for me because there was no internal friction about questioning about what was the right thing to do.
Yeah. Talk to me about the communication aspect of it, because I think a lot of business leaders and team leaders, and particularly if they haven't been in a situation like this, are trying to strike the right balance in how they galvanize their teams, but are realistic at the same time because there are so many unknowns, and that you can't. People's bullshit meters are pretty finely tuned at all times, and particularly now.
Well, are they though? Is it?
I don't know.
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I think there's a big challenge. Previously in 08, you have to remember, and I'm going to really date myself, and you'll agree with this. Social media at that time was still, nighttime or on the side. It is not. You don't have your phone with your Twitter feed open or TikTok or everything else, Instagram, everything else going on at the same time. So the speed at which both information and even potentially more misinformation travels both internally and externally within your company that's the biggest difference between now and 08 and 09.
Yeah.
And that is, you can either whine about it, but you're not going to change.
But do you mean external or internal? Like we have something at Digiday I call DNN, which is the Digiday News Network, which is sort of the unofficial channel through which
editor-in-chief of that, Brian.
I don't know. I think Hope Reichard, actually, who's on this call, is. But is that what you're referring to? I mean, because it seems like there's two different.
No. I'm saying that both externally and external starts to inform what the internal spin is, right? And that's a very easy thing to lose control of. And what I find, which previously, like in 08, 09, like I was saying about everybody being in the same page, we used to do weekly, not daily, but weekly stand-ups to granted, it was easy. We were only 78, 80 people, but it was a lot easier to communicate that you had time to prepare. You had time to analyze what was going on. I think the big challenge for leaders now is my biggest piece of advice would be not to get paralyzed by the uncertainty or lack of communication. Be confident about what you can be confident about, and be honest about what you're uncertain of, but be in front of everybody. You gotta be there now because they're looking for beacons. They're looking for leaders. And it's okay to say, I don't know that yet, or here's what could happen. Um, you know, I think it's actually, you know, we made the joke, we were talking about Cuomo the other day, right? And how he's doing it.
Yeah.
And I think he's striking an interesting balance. I think he's really showboating a little bit, but that's okay.
We'll take it at this point.
We'll take it. I'll take it over.
I mean, look at the
anybody else.
consideration set,
I'll
Rich.
take
I
it
mean,
over anybody else out there. So that is it's low bar. But I really think my point there is we have gone out of our way here, and I cannot, and it can't just be me. We have dispersed across all of our leaders the amount of communication that is happening on a probably, you know, when you take time zones into account, almost 24/7 basis.
Yeah.
And the willingness to be open about sharing information about what we do know and what we don't, and then asking people to be participatory. I've not seen levels of this before, and there's no way we would be performing to the degree we are. And it's early days so far, but I am so encouraged by where we stand. It is so impressive. And, you know, like you've heard me say this before, you know, 95% of what we do is out of our control. 5% is like the 5% that's in your control, you better destroy it. A lot of times when shit gets bad, leaders want to hold on to things, like they want to white knuckle it. You know, we've kind of made people participate with these issues. We got in front, we had a big production meeting about 7.5, 8 weeks ago, right when this first started, just to trickle. And we were like, what if this happens? And can I tell you something? The leaders on the video production team, each of the different shows and everybody stepped up and they didn't wait to be told what to do. They were like, here's what we can do. Here's how we can start. Let's even double time or triple time and start banking episodes. I mean, it wasn't a directive oriented meeting. It was a challenge to go, here's what's going to happen. And I was so unbelievably pleasantly surprised that people stepped up to this challenge and used it as a reason to win rather than an excuse to fail.
Right. You shared with me the note you sent around to your team, which I thought was really good.
Tough balance to strike.
Yeah, explain. I would love to publish this, by the way, if you're okay with it.
Let me talk. I get in trouble all the time from my.
That's why I'm asking. That's why I'm asking you now.
Let me. You know what? It might be a great follow-up if you want to put this up.
That's a no. That's a no.
No.
But let me get at it. Like, what were you trying to accomplish with that? Because I think this goes to the balance you were striking. Because you did actually strike, interesting balance there. I did like a Control F for we, and like you used that like 30 times. And that's important.
I always do.
So explain the balance you were trying to strike in that.
Let me say it this way. That was written a while ago. It's over a week ago now.
A while ago.
No, yeah.
I know.
Every day is like a year now, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I had all brown hair actually a week ago.
Especially this. I like it. But no, I look, the number one thing, especially back then, there were even more unknowns and people were just discovering a lot of things. And there was a lot of speculation around how bad things could get. And I was being kind of in front of it because I kind of felt like the news and the speculation was all negative. And I'm not saying that a lot of negative things wouldn't happen or couldn't happen or still might, but I wanted people to have their head about them. And I thought the most important thing was to remind people to be calm, because whether it's personally or professionally, when you're calm, you're gonna optimize and maximize the situation. And then the biggest thing, which I thought is important and I'm not taking shots at any other business, but we talked about the history of Complex and all of the challenges it's faced. 9/11, we were birthed out of that. 08, 09, getting funding, exiting the business, shifting all the different paradigms that we've been, whether it's print, digital, text, video, ad network, owned and operated, an IP factory versus a digital media company. All those things. I wanted to remind everybody that no matter what we were faced, whether it was fiscal, personal, sector-wide, individual to complex, we won through strategy and superior execution. And when you remind people that you've done it, and we've done it as a team, and we've done it as a brand, there is no reason to not believe that we will be able to do it all over again and be more successful than other people, because that's our track record. And that's keeping your head about you and reminding people that that's where that confidence comes from. It's not chest beating, rah bullshit. It's facts and realities. And I think that's the difference between confidence for the sake of confidence, but confidence that is foundational and real.
Yeah, we call it show, don't tell in journalism.
That's right.
And because if you've done it, you can just point to, hey, look, this is unique in many ways, but at the same time, like, look at where we've come from. Look at all the things that we had to overcome along the way. This is another one, and we're going to overcome it. Right?
That's right. And it's simple.
Hard, but simple. So let's talk about the hard stuff. What do you see ahead as the sort of top three of the hard things that all media companies are going to face?
Publishers specifically?
Yeah.
Okay. Number one, I sent out a tweet the other day that I was trying to get down to a simple formula. I don't know if you saw it.
Not the salami one?
Not the salami one.
Okay.
That was this morning. I had a very nice breakfast this morning. But it was basically, I was trying to break it down, like, for a publisher, what is the math of who's going to win and who's potentially going to lose and why? And to me, it's brand plus brains plus balance sheet equals a real business, right? And my point is that's true always. It's heightened during this time frame. Mm-hmm. And let me go to that as an answer. Is the first thing is probably the third thing on that list right now. The biggest differentiation between people, there's going to be pain, right? We just don't know for how long. The first dollars that get cut are advertising dollars. The last dollars that come back are advertising dollars. Where are you? Where are publishers in their diversification? Are they still over 90% advertising? That's going to hurt even more. How big of a balance sheet do they have to continue to maintain continuity in their staff as much as possible? How many dollars will get cut from advertising? So it's not just the length of time, but how deep will the original cut be, which will then define how long the recovery will take. Mm-hmm. Did people diversify into events as a large scale play? If they did, that's going to be very tough, because events, we can all speculate. I shut my phone off, and of course it comes up on my computer. We can all speculate about what's going to happen there, but nobody knows yet, right? So my point there is, if you haven't, as a squirrel, gathered your nuts, I think it's potentially, you just got to be able to pay people, and you got to be able to keep the lights on. And I think there's a lot of people that might not be able to. I'm not that familiar with everybody's balance sheet. That tends to be the thing people talk about least.
Yeah.
But that is, to me, one of the scariest things out there.
Well, that's getting to the other side, right? I mean, before you can talk about innovate, like, you got to survive in order to be able to come out of this stronger. I mean, that's the first thing, right? But when you're scenario planning out, I think this is you talked about, it's a really difficult situation, because there's always a lack of visibility with downturns and crises, but it's a lack of visibility times 10.
That's right.
And so how can you even scenario plan when there's so little visibility about whether this is a 3-month thing, a 6-month thing, a year
Well,
thing?
well, you're hitting something very interesting, right? In that, sorry, I think the recording stopped over here. The what you If you're good at this, it doesn't have to be definitive in black and white, right? How can you create things that are fluid? And when I say that is, do you have time stops? It's like, we're going to do this much reduction over this time frame, and if it's getting better, we'll turn it up. If it's getting worse, we'll turn it down.
Wait, turn it up, not turn up the reductions.
Right. Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I get it.
Yes. Sorry. The mezcal is getting to me. But you know what I mean. You have to be able to be in a situation where, are you creating fluid outlets because of the uncertainty, and the uncontrollable uncertainty, right? These are external. There's nothing we can do to increase the uncertainty. All we can do is increase our likelihood to be able to react to the uncertainty when it gets defined. So if that is the case, how do you create a plan that isn't hard and fast and rigorous from a black and white perspective, but very fluid and has a nice organic volatility to it?
But explain how you balance that with people's wanting certitude, right? Because if you got to make a painful decision, whether it's pay cuts or staff, furloughs, whatever it is, everyone, the first question I think is this the first one? Because everyone's been through the drip, 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 and there's a school of thought: cut once, cut deep, and then like people can really lock in.
Look, more power to anybody who feels like they have a definitive answer on what that is. When you're guessing like that, you're guessing with people's livelihoods. Number one, you have to remember that. But this isn't just about the employees; it's everything right now, because it's all of those things are intertwined, right? Your cost structures, your fixed cost structures are your fixed cost structures. So, my response there would be to go back to what I was saying before: is instead of insulting your team from a communications perspective and saying to them, like, you know what, here's the directive, here's just what we're going to do. It's like, we might not be right. Here's our best guess. Participate with us. Like, let's have our individual team directors go to the teams. I mean, I know we've had people go like, all right, if you were to operate with 20% less budget, what would it look like? And like, you have to involve people, is my point.
But that's really hard when you want to move fast, right?
But you know what? Is it better to move 40% slower with 100% of the people behind you, or is it better to move 100% faster with no support?
Right.
Like, to me, I'll take the former over the latter every day and twice on Sunday.
Okay, that sounds like a good approach, Rich.
I mean, we're guessing, man.
No, but I think that honesty is important, particularly in this time when there is so much uncertainty. The final thing I want to talk about is sort of innovations within a downturn. I mean, I think a lot of times the focus is on just getting to the other side, and that is, without getting to the other side, you can't innovate. Like, I mean, you gotta survive.
100%.
But at the same time, this does create opportunities, whether it's for new companies. This history has proven this, whether it's for new companies or, new aspects to your business. Explain how you think about that.
I was about to cut you off and say, I think the opportunity is even more for companies that are existing in the marketplace. And let me explain. When things are this tight and uncertain at the same time, new stuff is going to be a little bit more complicated. I'm not saying that there won't be new companies and new ideas that come out of this. However, if the way advertisers and brands always react, they're going to go to the people that they know and have confidence and relationships with. So that means, okay, what about thinking about it this way? And I know we're doing this already, so I'm a little bit giving some stuff away, but at the same time, it's more of a testament to my team, is that we're going, if our depth of connection is our biggest differentiation, how is the consumer going to change, not just now, but in the future off of this? And if that changes, how is our conversation change? And if we have ideas around how that conversation is going to change, both shorter and even more on a longer term basis, because people might commute less, people might spend more time having different types of consuming different types of conversation in different depths. And I'm intentionally not being specific there, because that's unfair to my team to give away some of the nuggets they've come up with, because it's really impressive. But they're already thinking about what is the new world order, and what are the opportunities for us to have conversations with existing advertisers. My viewpoint there is, if you think innovation, and I'm not saying you in the general sense, but if people think that innovation can only come from new companies because it's easier, because it's a blank slate, you've already lost. Wrap up and go home. Like, my viewpoint would be, like, let's step up and go. I think this is also where you're going to separate the people who have clothes on and who don't, right? When the tide rolls out, and it's like, are you already thinking about, do you own the conversation with your consumer? Do you understand where it could go? Do you have solutions for how to optimize that? And then are you ready to include and bake in, because of experience, organically advertisers, brands, or other monetization opportunities within that, because we have a superior thought process? I mean, I'll tell you, we're not there yet, but if you had to ask me what I think our business would look like in June of 2021, some of the stuff that's come out of our marketing, our brand innovations team, our sales team, even our content team, there's some things that are not solves for the short term. They will be components that might even be drivers of our business by June next year.
Well, I think what's interesting too is this is a massive test. It's not an A/B test, but like, change actually happens fairly slowly. I think, for all we talk about disruption and stuff like this, all of a sudden everything is turned upside down. Everybody's working from home. Everybody is remote. Everybody is trapped inside. Like, there is the opportunity for extremely large behavioral changes to take place. Who knows which are temporary?
But let me jump in there, though, and this is where I will make it like the line of delineation. I agree with you on a theoretical basis, but here's my point: is a lot of people, if you have not been agents of change organically, and you don't have that muscle memory in your company, and yes, I'm talking to a lot of those older traditional media companies, not all of them, but a lot of them, have fun trying to turn that Titanic ship of attitudes and behaviors. If you've invested in people and leaders who stick their head in the sand and want to ride it out into the sunset, have fun, because your business is a wrap. And ride it down. All you did is expedite your death. So my viewpoint is, I think there's a lot of people out there now who, the ones who are going to reap the largest benefits are the ones who've invested on an attitudinal and a behavioral basis of constantly being agents of change.
Got it. Thank you for this conversation, Rich. I do want to open it up in case anyone has a question. Hope we doing this through chat. If you have a couple minutes, Rich.
Sure, I'm in.
Are we doing this through chat? Are we doing video?
You can do this through Q&A, or if anyone wants to raise their hand, I can allow you to talk.
Okay. See if anyone has a question.
I love this. You'd think the.
Oh, we do have a question
from
Charles Warner. Charles, I'm gonna let you speak now.
I hope this isn't a Zoom bomb, Charles. Get ready, Rich.
I love it.
Here comes the Zoom bomb. No, this is really, really great, and I appreciate you guys taking the time to do this with us. One of the first things that we're running into as a publisher, and I'm sure you guys experience this, is the advertisers want to pull back on the advertising. They want to cancel. I think they're just kind of feeling it out. You know, they're like, hey, what's your cancellation policy? And what do you do? What's your best way? I mean, we're trying to work with them. and we're trying to offer to move things, down. Like we're trying to do everything except for cancel, right now, and be there for them and pivot. I'm just kind of curious what your guys' take on the best way to deal with that. And ironically enough, it's not the small advertisers we're hearing from, it's the really big guys. So just curious how you would handle, these are advertisers with contracts that want to cancel, want to, push it off. Just kind of curious how you would deal with that.
It's interesting your caveat there. We're seeing the exact opposite. We're not seeing a lot of the larger scale people be the most have the most trepidation. But let me that aside, that's really scary, by the way, like super scary. So I understand your question. I think, look, since this is something we've never seen before, I think the normal responses are, and I'm not criticizing you guys specifically or anybody, but I think the normal responses of, oh, well, let's wait, or here's how we could repackage or whatever. I think the normal responses are the wrong way to go. I think the right way to think about this is, okay, and I'm going to use this as an example because we have a client that we've kind of approached this way with is, all right, forget about just supporting us. How about everybody knows that this is an opportunity for brands to both support people and then not get credit for it per se, but remind people that they are participating and helping everybody along. And I think, what we were trying to do is go, how do we work with you, somebody who has restaurants as a distribution platform that's very important, and bring in Roar as a charity, and we'll participate by doubling the impressions that we will support this campaign. But it is about supporting philanthropic efforts of Roar on behalf of your brand, and we will put in money in kind on a barter basis. I think, and again, I'm not the specific tactics are irrelevant there. The point is we've never seen anything like this before. There's going to be more people that are hurting than ever before. How do you help these brands and give them options to help other people as well as help themselves stay active in the marketplace and help money keep moving through this? And I think that type of thought process is the right one. It's not perfect, but it's the best I can give you.
One question that came in through the chat is, I don't think many people, maybe you did have a pandemic scenario plan on the shelf. But
I could say we did not.
But it brings up the point of how often should companies be doing disaster / worst case scenario reviews? Comes in from Mark Sweeney.
And give me it's gonna sound a little contradictory. Planning for a specific disaster could be the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. It's like, when you're negotiating a contract and a lawyer gets a hold of it and they're like, oh my God, let me.
So what if you're hit by lightning by the time?
And here's everything that could happen. By the way, if you were hit by lightning, fall in a paint bucket, and then got hit by a car because you fell in a black paint bucket and it was at night and so on and so forth. Like, my viewpoint is, I kind of answered this indirectly before, is if you on a personal or a professional basis have not operated your business with discipline, to have a balance sheet, that balance sheet buys you time. That time allows you to think about these scenarios because you never know what's going to happen. It's not about preparing for the specifics. It's about buying time to be able to not have to knee jerk and panic and have duress as a response.
Got it.
And that to me is what I will criticize businesses for not doing, not preparing for a pandemic. When's the last one we've had? It's not being prepared for anything that potentially could happen. And that's where I think people go wrong.
Okay, so just two quick questions, then we'll let you go. One, very good from Sherry. He's taking my thunder here. Earlier this year, it was reported, maybe by Digiday, let's hope, that 50% of your revenue is e-commerce. You talked about advertising being the first to go, last to come back. What are you seeing in your commerce business? You've got a bunch of hype beasts stuck at home. Are they shopping like there's no tomorrow?
you. I I am pleasantly surprised. It is so early days, by the way. So like, let's take all of this with a grain of salt. I think it was more important that people felt like they were home and had less to do. So I think shopping continued. Let's see if that continues as what happens from an economic perspective. But to say that we have continued to grow, and look, we launched the store in early December, but to say that we've continued to grow through this is an understatement. So I'm
So far,
ecstatic
TBD.
so far.
Okay,
So far,
final one,
key
then
there.
we'll leave.
We're not counting on that continuing.
Okay. Final one is if you were, this comes from Sam Park, if you were building Complex from scratch right now, where would the majority of your focus be?
You know what's funny? I remember, I think I even said this to you. I don't remember whether it was Can or another conversation. Is, it's great to have your own distribution platform and control that. I just don't know if it's how effective and how hard it is to build a brand in this day and age if you haven't already done it. I would probably blow it up completely and look at it differently. I don't even know if it would be media first. If I would think about it, I would think about being a brand that happens to play in media, that happens to develop content. I think the kind of, if I had to really think about it, I might actually put product development, and not product development in our own exclusive basis, but product development on a shared and collab oriented basis, be the tip of the spear for what we do. And that could be anything from marketplace and community expertise, all the way up to style and building of products. But if we were to start there, I would probably make media be the second or third thing that we would focus on. Definitely not the first.
Okay, final, just because it's very interesting. It comes from Finland. Have you taken any pneumonia vaccinations for yourself or your staff?
Is that has that been proven as a preventative measure?
I don't know, Jesse. I'm willing to try.
I don't know if I want to take that.
Angela Merkel took it. I don't know if it's saying Angela or not.
I literally would be probably on the side of, I'd want to see a little bit more research around that. I haven't done anything other than, look, we were early in trying to give people options to work from home and then tried to close things down. Again, my team, I cannot say thank you enough. My guys everybody on my team has just been so receptive and not whining and team oriented, that I would love to be able to do something. I will tell you this, whatever does become available, we'll try and make it available for our people, and would do anything on that side. I have not heard that as an option. So
yeah,
I'm going to go Google it the minute we get off of this shit. So we'll see.
So if there's a DTC brand that's sprung up around that. But yeah, I think a final note was just like what you were saying, resiliency is going to be, everything within organizations, getting to the other side and then beyond.
I'm going to say one thing.
Yeah.
I've kind of alluded to it before. Brian, you've heard me say it before. My team, I know, has heard me say it before. We're in the most ambiguous sector out of any real business sector there is, which is advertising, media, and marketing. And that means there's two kind of camps. There's a lot of people who use ambiguity and go, oh my God, that's a great excuse to fail. And then there's ambiguity and people go, oh my God, there's a million ways to win. Use this challenge and use this issue and uncertainty, not as an excuse to fail, but find out more about yourself and your company and your team, and as a way to find out if you're a winner, and step up and take the challenge on rather than get paralyzed. Just don't allow yourself to get paralyzed. Like it is, I just cannot say that enough. And look, you never win if you don't play. So like that's my sorry. I want to just leave.
That's a wonderful thought to leave it on. Thanks so much for doing this. Really appreciate
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
And thank you everyone for joining us. We will be back next week with a new episode, but we hope to do more of these. Let me know what you think. I'm just Brian at digiday.com. And thank you again for spending this time with us. Thanks again, Rich.